girls just want to have fun. It didn't come out till I was 30. Okay? Now, I never told anybody how old I was. I would say to them, whenever they asked me, I said, what do you think I am, some kind of car? What do you want to do, pick up the hood, check the mileage, and kick the tires? You know? You can't get into that mindset because it ain't over till it's over, and it's never over until you give in. And you don't have to give in.
We are brainwashed from the time we are children of what age you're supposed to be married, what age you're supposed to have a kid, what age you're supposed to do this, and what age you're supposed to stop doing that. Oh my God, at that age.
What, are you supposed to just die when you're 40?
In the high-octane world of entertainment, stardom often glows brightly, but briefly. An icon one day and a has-been the next. Pop stars are eclipsed by the relentless push for youth. The trajectory in the music industry is typically a tale of soaring highs followed by a commercial decline. But Cyndi Lauper's commercial struggle wasn't just about a shift in musical tastes. No, it reflected an industry obsessed with youth, an unwillingness to let a female pop star reinvent herself. But how did Mariah Carey's ex-husband impact Cyndi Lauper's career? How did Trump accidentally reignite her career? How did Broadway become the ultimate saviour? And what does this ultimately say about the treatment of age in pop overall? The 1980s ushered in a new wave of pop music, and few artists encapsulated the exuberance of that era, quite like Cyndi Lauper. With her wild fashion, unmistakable booming soprano voice, and anthemic tracks, Lauper became an overnight sensation. Her debut album, She's So Unusual, in 1983, was a cultural phenomenon, producing timeless hits like Girls Just Wanna Have Fun and Time After Time. It made Lauper the first woman in history to have 4 top 5 singles from a debut album. Lauper's appeal was more than just her music. She was a symbol of individuality.
I want to thank EPA, who supported me and allowed me to be myself as opposed to a clone.
Her quirky style, bold hair colours and unique persona were a breath of fresh air in a world often dominated by more conventional pop figures. She championed the idea of being different and used her so unusual style to full effect in the new MTV era to dominate a generation in music.
I saw it, I heard it, I knew that we were never gonna just listen to music again. I always felt from now on, we'll watch it.
Her inclusion on the legendary We Are the World charity single, the Goonies soundtrack, and her second album True Colours, with the title track peaking at #1, helped Lauper become a defining cultural cornerstone of 80s pop culture. Yet, in an industry fueled by youth, this success couldn't last forever. Lauper was 30 when she finally found success as a solo artist, and unfortunately only had a small window of time before her age would become an issue. In 1988, Cyndi Lauper made a strategic move into Hollywood with her film Vibes, co-starring Jeff Goldblum. The hope was that the film and its soundtrack would boost her visibility, similar to Dolly Parton's success in 9 to 5. However, the project was a complete disaster.
It's also, you know, you and I also did 2 movies that you couldn't pay the airlines to play.
Dealing with the emotional and physical toll of endometriosis, Lauper struggled to balance her health and creative obligations. Though she wrote the heartfelt ballad Unconditional Love for the film, Columbia Records rejected it, demanding a more up-tempo track. Forced to pivot, Lauper recorded Hole in My Heart, penned by John Orange. Yet this decision proved disastrous. When the song was released to the radio stations, it received little airplay. Why? Because radio airplay wanted women singing ballads, not up-tempo tracks. Lauper was originally right, but the label wouldn't trust her. As if these setbacks weren't enough, Vibes the film was savaged by critics. Journalists were quick to label it bad vibes, predicting that the film's failure would irreparably damage Lauper's career.
It was director's strike. There's always something happening, you know.
Yeah.
So there I was at the wrong time in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scathing reviews and lack of support from the music industry created a perfect storm of professional and personal challenges. The weight of unmet expectations and unrelenting scrutiny left Lauper struggling to find her footing in an industry that quickly seemed to turn her back on her. The soundtrack album for the film was quickly scrapped. Following this setback, the label aimed to reclaim her musical success with her third album, A Night to Remember. However, the album's production was fraught with behind-the-scenes drama. The late 80s brought further turmoil to Cyndi Lauper, not only in her personal and professional life, but also within the industry that once championed her. Don Dempsey, the general manager of Epic Records and one of Lauper's staunchest supporters, was abruptly fired during a corporate upheaval. As Sony Music moved to acquire CBS, Epic Records fell under this burgeoning conglomerate. Enter Tommy Mottola, a powerful figure poised to take the helm, renowned for discovering Mariah Carey. Now, for a deeper dive into his controversial influence, my Mariah series, How Racism Poisons Everything, sheds light on the sinister nature of Mottola's reign in music.
Sony, Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is a mean, he's a racist, and he's very devilish.
Lauper found herself on the wrong side of this corporate shift. In a bold move, she sided with the managers who were fired during the transition, and according to her memoir, this decision earned her Mottola's lasting dislike. The repercussions were swift and severe. Cyndi's material would no longer receive the robust publicity budgets that had previously propelled her to stardom. The new leadership at Epic, driven more by commerce than art, sought to radically alter Lauper's image, igniting intense tension and animosity within the company. Lauper recalls in her memoir how the label's new heads were less interested in her artistic vision and more focused on commercial viability. This clash not only stifled her creative freedom, but also led to a series of ongoing professional setbacks.
I was really depressed. In fact, I must say, when I was making that record, I was so depressed.
The synergy that once fueled her groundbreaking success was replaced by a corporate machine intent on reshaping her into a more marketable product. Her professional and personal life collided disastrously when she split with her manager and fiancé David Wolff during the album's creation.
The pressure, because we were always talking about work, it was always work. And, you know, it was so intense all the time that we needed a break.
This turmoil was reflected in the project and the album, A Night to Remember, which Lauper would later refer to as A Night to Forget.
In 1989, I did that album, A Night to Forget. It was really to remember, but I forgot about it.
Although it featured the Grammy-nominated hit, I Drove All Night, the album itself struggled commercially, failing to break the top 30 on the Billboard charts. The cancellation of her supporting US tour further signalled the album's underperformance and left Lauper at a professional low point. The pop landscape was shifting, with the arrival of grunge, alt-rock and hip-hop dominating the charts. Artists like Nirvana, Pearl Jam and Dr. Dre redefined the sound of a new generation, leaving behind the neon-soaked pop of the 1980s. In fact, pop as a genre began to wither away as an urban revolution surged to the top. Even Madonna worked with Babyface and Take a Bow, exploring R&B in a more upfront manner. As record label politics complicated her career, an ugly problem began to rear its head. Ageism, a silent but powerful force. As Lauper was now in her late 30s, the pop industry, which gravitates towards youth and reinvention, began to cast her aside. No longer the ingenue, she was now seen as past her prime, a narrative that the music industry often opposes on aging pop stars. Tommy Mottola wasn't funding the promo she needed to relaunch her career. As the 90s progressed, Cyndi found herself dismissed as uncool, yesterday's news. The emergence of grunge or hip-hop, R&B, they all redefined the musical landscape. Critics were quick to label Cyndi as a relic of the 1980s, a decade whose importance had waned. And in response to this, she released her most creatively risky album at that point, and arguably one of the best of her career.
What am I going to do? Everybody else wins or I win. I lost my boyfriend we were going to get married and all that, and everything went to hell, and I thought once you work that hard and you become famous, it should be a redeeming thing, and it's not. And I didn't want my life to be reduced to a girl who wanted to have fun, just didn't. Right, I wasn't going to let my work be reduced to nothing.
As Lauper was hitting 40, she released Hatful of Stars, a bold departure from her earlier work, tackling serious social issues like racism and homophobia. It was a more introspective, mature album, reflecting the evolution of Lauper not just as an artist, but as a person. Moving away from the zany cartoon character she invented, Lauper exposed a raw, vulnerable side to her artistry. However, the industry wasn't ready for this new vision of Cyndi. Fans dismissed it as too much of a departure from her bubbly pop beginnings, and critics were mixed. It failed to chart well in the US, and Cyndi was once again labelled as a has-been. The industry's message was clear. A pop star, especially one of her age, was not supposed to age, and certainly not to redefine herself. Her next album, Sisters of Avalon in 1997, faced similar problems. Critics praise its eclectic and experimental themes, but as internal label problems blocked promotion and external ageist barriers blocked opportunities, the album bombed. Honestly, this felt not only like a jab at Cyndi, but often like a direct attempt to erase her relevance. Neither album received any Grammy nominations or legitimate interest from the industry at all. Yet, in retrospective reviews, the Songwriters Hall of Fame heavily praised the works. So what was the original problem with these records? I believe the indifference wasn't just merely a reflection of musical taste. No, it was a declaration that Cyndi's time had passed. A sentiment reinforced by an industry obsessed with discarding its older icons in favour of the next new thing. To make matters worse, the late 90s brought a wave of bubblegum pop that further solidified the industry's obsession with youth. With the rise of NSYNC or Christina Aguilera, teen pop took to the airwaves. This new era embodied a fresh, slick, produced sound, shifting the attention away from artists who had dominated in previous decades. Now, by the time bubblegum pop reached its peak in the late 90s and early 2000s, Cyndi Lauper was in her late 40s and found herself increasingly sidelined. The contrast between Lauper's mature artistry and the new teen idols made it even harder for her to compete in a youth-obsessed industry. Although her albums were still hitting gold in Japan, her US label prevented her from moving companies, yet wouldn't adequately promote her at the same time. Cyndi was trapped, and when she finally had the freedom to jump ship when her contract was over, the worst imaginable thing happened. In 2001, Lauper was preparing to make yet another attempt at a comeback. She recorded Shine, an album that mixed her soaring vocals with fresh production. Hopes were high, but unfortunately, fate had other plans. The label backing the project, Idel America, went bankrupt just before the album's release. The album was then leaked on Napster, and without proper commercial launch and no resources to promote it, the project faded into obscurity. Despite this setback, a few tracks from the album would later see the light of day in a 2004 EP released in Japan, but the opportunity to reignite her pop career in the US had been lost.
I have this CD that was kind of fan-driven because it was supposed to come out, a full CD was supposed to come out on this record label that kind of Enroned itself, you know, like most companies do. And then I got my music back, I started playing live, and as I started playing live, more and more people were singing the songs that would have come out. And
approaching her 50s, the weight of ageism became an encroaching prison, and Lauper's ability to navigate the industry became increasingly stifled. Although she released Bring It to the Brink in 2008, which was Grammy nominated for Best Dance Album, it wasn't until an unexpected interaction with Donald Trump that Cyndi received an unexpected boost. In 2010, she appeared on The Celebrity Apprentice, hosted by Donald Trump. While her involvement was initially seen as surprising, it proved to be a savvy move. The show exposed Lauper to a broader audience who may not have been familiar with her work beyond the 80s. Her sharp wit, charm, and genuine personality resonated with viewers, reigniting interest in her as a pop culture figure. The mainstream press attention substantially helped with her next album, Memphis Blues. Lauper performed tracks from it on the finale of The Apprentice, and the album would spend 13 consecutive weeks at #1 on the blues charts, becoming the most successful blues album of the year. It was her highest charting album on the Billboard 200 since 1986. The New York Post ranked it one of the top 10 albums of the year, and it was nominated for Best Traditional Blues Album at the Grammys. The singing she displayed on the blues tour, which included over 140 dates, was phenomenal, and as she neared 60 years old, Lauper's striking vocals proved her ageist detractors wrong, time after time. However, Lauper's most significant comeback came not through her solo music, but through Broadway. In 2013, she composed the score for the musical Kinky Boots, a project that would redefine her career. The show was a smash hit, winning 6 Tony Awards, including Best Original Score, making Lauper the first solo woman to win the category. This new creative path allowed her to reinvent herself on her own terms, outside the confines of the youth-obsessed pop industry. Kinky Boots cemented Lauper's place as a multifaceted artist, proving that while pop may have cast her aside, her talents transcended genre and medium. It helped to reorientate her reputation in the industry, and Lauper would later be inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame and have a new wave of pop acts acknowledge her brilliance. However, despite her success in other fields, Lauper's experience highlights the ageism deeply embedded in the pop music industry. Though she found creative triumphs in blues and Broadway, the door to pop superstardom remained closed to her, largely due to the music world's unwillingness to embrace older female acts.
I'm 70, all right?
Are you serious?
Coupled with record label politics that stifled her, her story illustrates the systematic barriers that aging pop stars face. No matter how talented or willing to evolve, the industry's obsession with youth often dictates their commercial fate. Which is why I recommend everyone to listen to Hatful of Stars, Sisters of Avalon, The Body Acoustic, Bring It to the Brink. Why? Because Cyndi is arguably one of the most underrated vocalists of her generation. And it's time we acknowledge this. Thanks for watching.
If you're gonna climb to the top of the mountain, and it's not easy, by the time you get there, you might as well have something good to say, right? So, you know.